What's up, everyone? It's the lawyer you know, and today we're going to break down the verdict in the controversial case of Jussie Smollett, Jussie Smollett, however you say his name. I'm going with Jussie Smollett because I don't really care to learn how to pronounce his name appropriately based on the fact that he sets us back years and years for victims of actual hate crimes and actual batteries and actual street muggings in big cities by making these false reports and embarrassingly doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on his lies, which came back to bite him eventually in the form of multiple felony convictions. So we're going to talk through this Jussie Smollett case, but at the very end of the video, I'm going to go through the most important thing we should all learn as a country and legally from the Jussie Smollett case. So most people know that this case surrounds the actor from Empire, who is black and gay, reporting to law enforcement officers in Chicago that he was the victim of a hate crime and a battery. And it turns out that he said things like, he was walking around with rope around his neck, saying there was bleach and rope and guys screaming MAGA, this is MAGA country, in the middle of Chicago in negative 27-degree weather or something, jumped him when he was coming out of a subway and committed this hate crime against him. Why people do things like this will always be debated, and we'll never know for sure because we can't enter somebody's mind. But what happened in the beginning of this case after he reported these fake crimes to law enforcement is what's so concerning to me about our criminal justice system. We have had some convictions and acquittals, just basically jury verdicts recently that I've agreed with and have given me more belief in our criminal and civil justice system recently. This case, again, once we got these convictions, once we heard the actual evidence, once we heard the testimony, once we saw how this trial played out, I absolutely agree with this guilty verdict. They was not guilty on one count, but multiple counts of felony convictions against Jussie Smollett. But the beginning of this case is why so many people in this country have an issue with how things are done. Politically speaking, people with power, control, and money and political ties, how they can bend the rules and not have the justice system affect them the same way as everybody else in our country. When Jussie Smollett first reported these crimes, he was angry that law enforcement didn't properly investigate and arrest the criminals who did this to him and convict them, and he just said they were incompetent basically and they didn't do their job. Well, when you do that, and when you make these false reports and make law enforcement officers look bad in this type of a situation, they don't like it. So charges were initially filed against Jussie Smollett. But then, shockingly, they were dismissed because the prosecutor didn't want to prosecute Jussie Smollett for this. Now, why did she do that? Most people say it was because of political pressure. You had Kamala Harris and other politicians coming out saying Jussie Smollett is a great guy, a personal friend, whatever they said about him, not knowing the situation. And I don't blame any of these politicians saying like they blatantly lied or they knew that he was lying. No, they just come out, they try to join a political narrative on both sides. They try to get the wave and ride the wave to whatever fits their political narrative, whether or not they know the facts. So that should make you think twice about any politician that comes to the back of anybody in the world today, because they don't actually know each other. They don't actually know if what they're saying is true. They're just trying to join forces, use their power for whatever is beneficial for them. So I'm sure Kamala Harris just thought this was going to be good for her narrative, go against MAGA country and the fight against hate crimes and things like that. But she didn't know Jussie Smollett was lying. And it seems like she didn't care enough to investigate. So these charges are dropped. Special prosecutor then comes, charges Jussie Smollett with 6 felony counts of disorderly conduct, but basically filing a false police report, and convicts him on 5 of 6 counts. And we'll get into what those counts are and why he was convicted of some counts and not others. But special prosecutor comes on board, and we don't know if he has political connections to one side or the other. He very well may. But he does the right thing at this point, charges him, and ends up convicting him, obviously, of most of the charges. So what was he actually charged with? Because some people see disorderly conduct and they think drunk outside a bar at 3 a.m. and throw a bottle or take a swing or mouth off or say something or do something they shouldn't have done, play your music too loud, whatever it may be. But this disorderly conduct is a 4th-degree felony and is basically filing a false police report. Now, some states have misdemeanor charges and felony charges for this specific crime. Sometimes it's just called filing a false police report. But in Chicago, it's a felony called disorderly conduct with the subtitle of filing a false police report. And all 6 charges were filing different false police reports or reporting crimes that didn't actually happen, whether it was a hate crime or a battery, to different officers. So every time he reported it to a different officer, that was another felony charge. The one charge they did not get a conviction on and was a not guilty verdict was that he said that an aggravated battery had occurred. So the jury didn't buy that Jussie Smollett ever said an aggravated battery had occurred, just a hate crime and a battery, I believe, to multiple officers multiple times. So with those 5 convictions, what's he looking at? Most people hear the word felony and they automatically think the worst of the worst. Felonies are the more serious crimes compared to misdemeanors in all states in our country. But 4th degree felony is the least severe felony in Chicago, and it doesn't even exist in some states. Some states don't even have 4th degree felonies. The least severe felony they have is a 3rd degree felony. So when we talk about 4th degree felonies, you're not looking at 5, 10, 15, 25 years in prison. The maximum for this type of charge, if you're convicted, is 3 years in prison and $25,000 fines. So how will they come to the sentencing on Jussie Smollett? Well, first, let's talk about the fact that his lawyers have come out and said that they are 100% confident and certain, basically, that he's going to win his appeal. They very well may win. But to say you're 100% confident is a joke. And again, it's embarrassing. And his lawyers have also said stuff in the media that's just blatantly false. That's why, if you don't know for a fact that your client is telling the truth with evidence or something like that, you don't come out and say things like that in the media. You don't say the police are lying, the prosecutors are lying, they're perpetuating fraud, everything Jussie Smollett said was true. You don't say things like that in the media. Jussie Smollett was doing interview after interview after interview, saying what happened to him, repeating what happened to him, that end up convicting him when the prosecutors proved that's just not true. It didn't happen like he said it happened at all. He staged the whole thing. So then when they can play all those clips, it's hook, line, and sinker. And his lawyers, the reason I'm getting to this is because, again, they said they're 100% certain he's going to win his appeal. Can we believe what they say in the media at this point? At this point, everybody's lost credibility on that side, in my opinion. You tell me if I'm wrong. But when you come out and just embarrass yourself on national news over and over again as a criminal defendant and the lawyers, I'm not going to believe what you say in the media at this point. We'll see. They very well could win. People win appeals sometimes. It happens. But I don't think anybody's 100% certain they're ever going to win. So, like I said, he's looking at multiple years in prison and thousands of dollars of fine. But no matter what we think about Jussie Smollett, no matter how heinous we think this is, it is not likely he's going to get a heavy-handed sentence. As far as we know, he has no criminal history. Second, he's probably a philanthropist or has made appearances at charities or given money to charities or has his own foundation or something like that. Most celebrities do. So that's going to be able to come out in sentencing. He's going to have a lot of people come testify to what a great guy he is, would be my guess. So when you stack up his sentencing with anybody else's, he shouldn't get a severe sentence. He shouldn't get 3 years in prison and the max fines. He really shouldn't. And again, those could be stacked up potentially because there are multiple felony convictions. But he'll likely get some kind of probationary period, definitely fines, hopefully community service, something to help him learn his lesson, not to do things like that, and to realize you're not above the law. No matter how rich you are, no matter how far deep your political connections go, you can't do stuff like this. And we'll talk about why at the end of the video. So Jussie Smollett, again, he's going to get this. But if they want to prove a point with him because he is a celebrity defendant and because the nation is watching and they want to deter people from doing this in the future, he could get something like a week in county jail, a month in county jail, 30 days. He can do it on weekends, something like that. We've seen some NBA players pop into my mind that have gotten some kind of convictions. They've served them on the weekends or a week here and there just to prove a point, basically, and to deter the future conduct. Because the most important thing to learn from this case, when you lie about crimes and you fake being a victim and you set up fake criminal action, there are repercussions. You're wasting government dollars, government time, and government resources where they could be putting it where it needs to go, especially in Chicago. They got enough to do there. And he wasted all this time. Not just on investigating his fake crime, but then they had to go and prosecute him for this. And this wasn't easy. When you're going up against real lawyers from a celebrity and a lot of money and power and political pressure, it's not easy. They had to dedicate a lot of time and resources to prosecuting him. And I have actually tried one of these cases, which is very unusual. You don't see filing a false police report go to trial very often. Mine was just a 2-day trial against a guy that filed a false police report in a small beach town here in Florida. And we had the entire police department, which I think was only 11 officers, come and testify. They had to shut down that police department for 2 days because of this trial. So this was that on steroids in a big city with a lot more crime than this little beach town I'm talking about. And you better believe that this little beach police department wanted to convict this guy with everything they had. And my guess is Chicago PD felt the same way with this case, because they were called out. They were embarrassed. Politicians and celebrities scolded them for how they handled this situation when they were right. So, first thing to learn, don't waste everybody's time and resources, because it comes back and hurts all of us as a society, and we all pay these tax dollars. Number 2, it kills the credibility of future victims. I know this as a lawyer because I see lawyers, and I have done it myself, to victims that are not real victims, or I've had to fight for victims people believe are not real victims because we have these false accusations coming through the pipe. And we've seen it a lot in sexual violence cases, right? That's the most common, where people attack the victims. But now Jussie Smollett has just opened up a target for hate crime victims and victims of battery and victims of mugging and victims of mugging in big cities. Because now everybody's going to reference this case and talk about this case. Well, could be false. You never know. It could be like Jussie Smollett. And they're going to reference this. This is going to be used in future legal cases. And third, learn not to believe what politicians and media and people say about legal cases. We say all the time in trials, when we talk to juries, this is the even playing ground. This is where everybody comes and Lady Justice has the scales of justice here, and you as the jury get to decide guilt or innocence, guilt or not guilty. That's what you get to decide here with your verdict. No matter what law enforcement says, you can listen to them. You can believe them or not believe them. No matter what politicians say, no matter what the judge says, no matter what anybody else says, you, the jury, make this decision. So when we hear all this outside noise about all of these cases, whether it's true or false, doesn't matter to them. It's their First Amendment right. They're allowed to say whatever they want. They're allowed to get their numbers and clicks and whatever, and there's no repercussion for them. And that is true when we see actual trials happening, where the evidence that goes before a jury is so different than what we hear in the media and on TV. So make sure to remember that. And these live streamed trials, or trials where we can get transcript, or open to the public, that's what's so important. That's why they are open to the public, at least in state cases. Because we should be allowed to see and hear the evidence that is actually true, admissible, valid, correct, and authentic that actually comes before a jury. Not just what somebody wants to spout off because it furthers their political agenda or their businesses or company's agenda. So that's what we need to learn from this case and all of these high-profile trials, is what we hear is not actually evidence. It's not actually credible. It's not actually admissible. Because there's a reason certain things don't come into trial. And usually it's because you can't prove their authenticity. It's because they're not credible. So when we see what actually goes into trial, we get to learn what actually happened in the case. What are the actual facts? So hopefully we as a society can learn those things so that we can get better and learn from our past mistakes and not make the same mistakes in the future. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this case. If you have any questions you want to continue to talk about Jussie Smollett, I know the case is over. I'm sure there's going to be appeal, obviously, since we heard from his lawyers. But if you want to hear anything else from me, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please share it with your friends and make sure you subscribe to our page. But for now, that's all we got. Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.